Oh yeah, and the barely disguised fetish he shoved into a story about girls aged 14 to 16.
The barely disguised fetishes of... Okay, stop. Stop. If we're gonna talk about sexual gratification in Sailor Moon, you are not ready for that conversation. Because, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Naoko inserted several of her fetishes into the manga, and the anime got rid of most of that shit. Oh, what's this? You thought Naoko Takeuchi was this pure and chaste lady who would never give in to the temptations of the lascivious flesh? Well then, how do you explain this? Yeah. That's a Naoko Takeuchi original watercolor of a 16-year-old Usagi's ass cheeks flapping in the wind. And this is some toxic man coming along and censoring it while redrawing it in the anime style. Gee, it's almost as if he didn't want to render the butt crack of a 16-year-old girl, but Naoko did. This is Naoko putting 14 to 16-year-old girls and even a 9 to 12-year-old girl, biologically speaking that's what she is, so shut up, in very revealing and sometimes suggestive dress. And this is the disgusting, perverted, lubricious anime men cleaning it up to make it 100% PG. Not even PG-13, just straight up PG, compared to innocent, precious little angel Naoko putting a tattoo on Rei's cleavage to literally draw attention to her adolescent breasts. And she went ahead and pulled down the bust line of every single character to emphasize their adolescent chesticles. Interesting that the female artist is more willing to get sexually explicit with her art than the many male artists behind the sexist, misogynistic, sexually gratuitous 90s anime. Oh, and here's some very important notes Naoko put next to her character designs, where she specifically emphasizes the sexiness and voluptuous features of the characters she came up with all by herself. She decided to broadcast in her notes this specific information in this specific way. Very interesting indeed. How about Naoko's non-consensual kiss fetish? Oh yes, you opened the door, now you gotta walk through it. She introduced us to this legitimately criminal fetish in chapter 1 of her manga, When Usagi Kisses Luna. Yes, I'm aware that this is supposed to be funny, cute, awkward, or whatever, and isn't intended to be sexual. I am not, in fact, as dense as this commenter appears to be. But if we're talking about creators inserting their fetishes into a show with 14 to 16-year-old girls, then we can't ignore the original creators' fetishes, now can we? And this is clearly a non-consensual kiss, which we will see a lot more of in this wonderful little manga that a pure and innocent little lady made. So buckle up, cause it quite literally only gets worse from here. The Masquerade Ball features the first kiss between Tuxedo Kamen and Usagi. We all know how that ends up happening. He takes advantage of her when she's drunk and passed out and bestows upon her a kiss. And this is clearly a non-consensual kiss, which can be interpreted as unsolicited sexual contact, which is the definition of sexual harassment or sexual assault. This is the most infamous example, and it's carried into the anime as well. So once again, the classic anime is not perfect. Stop acting like I don't believe that. But regardless, here's all the other instances of sexual assault that didn't make it into the classic anime. Tuxedo Kamen picks up a comatose Sailor Moon off the side of the road and plants one on her right then and there. So that's twice he sexually assaulted her after she fell unconscious. But then she winds up doing it to him in the following chapter, where she forces herself on him. Again, he didn't consent to this kiss. There was no reasonable expectation of sexual contact, evident by his completely shocked reaction after she pulls away. Which means this is the first time Usagi sexually assaulted Mamoru. Equal rights indeed. Then we skip to the finale of the Dark Kingdom arc, where wouldn't you know it, Usagi passes out for the umpteenth time. Seeing that his love interest was comatose, Mamoru just couldn't help himself and went ahead and put his mouth on her mouth, making this the third time he sexually assaulted Usagi. I'm starting to see a pattern here. And before you start trying to excuse this one, I realized she had just used up all her energy and he was trying to bring her back to life, essentially. But nowhere does it say he needed kid to kiss her to give her some energy. You know, kind of like what Classic establishes in its greatest story, the R movie. But maybe Crystal Mamoru had other options, neither we nor he knows, but he immediately jumped to macking on an unconscious minor again. So don't tell me this is fine because she's dying or whatever. The problem is, this is the third time he's done this. He didn't even consider other options that didn't involve tongue punching her gaping maw. His instant and immediate reaction was to mac on her when she was unconscious again. This is the fourth non-consensual kiss between these two, and we've only hit the end of the first arc. Naoko's fetish is clearly on display because otherwise, why did she include it so much in such a short amount of time? Then, when we get to the beginning of the next arc, Chibiusa is guilty of a non-consensual kiss. Yes, Naoko forced a literal child in on her fetish after she forced a literal cat in as an opener. Fan-f***ing-tastic. Chibiusa kisses Mamoru on the lips when she appears from the future, which is the second time this is framed as a joke, when it's a father and daughter doing it. We're really getting into criminal offense levels with this fetish now, aren't we? Again, the anime has this moment as well, but the origin of this is the manga, which means the fetish on display here belongs to Naoko, not the anime team, which is the point this person is trying to make and has already failed miserably at it. Let's keep exploring how miserable this failure truly is, shall we? We then get to the future where Prince Demando proceeds to treat Usagi the same way Mamoru did when he barely knew her, and we get some more non-consensual kissing. So we're up to 7 instances of this, all under the lustful eye of Naoko. But at least she had the wherewithal to condemn this one in the story itself, only because it's a villain doing it. But when our protagonists do the exact same thing, it's a-okay and all romantical. Then we get Chibiusa transformed into Black Lady, forcing another kiss on her father, which is just... no. The anime brilliantly changed this into a simple hallucination cooked up by the evil wise man in an attempt to break Usagi. It never actually happens in reality, it's just a hallucination from a sick, evil bastard. But here, in Naoko's rendition, full-on brainwashed incest. Hooray! Also, we end the arc with Chibiusa doing it yet again. So that's 9 non-consensual kisses just in the first 2 arcs. What a record for good old Naoko. How about we add just 1 more? Make it a nice round number. This one's a doozy. Moving on to the Infinity arc, we get acquainted with the unfaithful, cross-dressing, hedonistic, sexual predatory freak touted as a hero, otherwise known as Tenno Haruka. When she's Sailor Uranus, Usagi's chasing her. Haruka directly threatens her, then performs a non-consensual kiss on the younger girl to shock her into letting her run away. This is the 10th non-consensual kiss in the manga, and we haven't even gotten to the last 2 arcs yet, where there's at least 1 more by the always slimy, self-centered, genuine weirdo, Seiya-kun. So I feel like that's a pretty good amount of evidence to say that this is a barely disguised fetish of Takeuchi-san. Otherwise, why is there so much of it in this f***ing thing? Nobody else was asking for any of this. She just put it in there because she wanted it in there. Because she likes this shit. Naoko Takeuchi is the perviest person connected to Sailor Moon. She put a sex scene in her manga between 2 underage characters, with Chibiusa sleeping in the next room over. Nobody told her to do that. She did it because she wanted to insert a sex scene in her story, because she gets off on it. There's no other reason she included that moment in the story. The anime didn't have any sex scenes in it. How is that possible if the men are so perverted and sexually exploitive? What's happening here?
I don't want these.